There are wounds that don't bleed, they simply etch themselves into the face of a mother who once loved too much. That day, I heard my daughter speak, her voice sweet as dew but cold as steel. "Mom, sign it. Let us hold this beach house to keep it safe." On the table lay a transfer contract, the house worth $300,000, the dream I'd spent half a lifetime to dare to touch. I looked at my two children, once the light of my life, now two strangers counting digits in their mother's eyes. I didn't cry. I poured more tea, smiled softly, and set my hand on the recorder button fixed under the table. Outside, the waves kept breaking steady like my heart, slow, steady, and no longer afraid. Because sometimes, the moment you realize family ties also have a price is when you finally learn the true value of freedom. And I just sat there, calmly watching the first day of their payback begin. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Josephine Myers, 67 years old, living in Clearwater, Florida, where the sea is crystal blue and the wind tastes as salty as memory. For 10 years, Mother's Day has been nothing more than a quiet morning to me. No knock at the door, no flowers delivered, only the ticking wall clock and the old air conditioner's soft breath. I still woke early as usual, brewed coffee, set the table, and laid out the hand-embroidered cloth my mother left me, a habit no one remembered but me. I arranged white porcelain plates, set out butter cookies and a tray of fresh strawberries. I cooked Southern-style beef stew, the dish Lauren and Tyler once fought over as kids. Back then, whenever I made it, we'd sit around the table and laugh late into the night. Now, that kitchen held only the sound of a spoon tapping the pot and the smudged noise of fading memories. By 10 a.m., I checked my phone only to see a blank screen. No texts, no calls. I opened Facebook, telling myself maybe my kids were busy. Then a photo popped up right on top: Lauren, my daughter, at a fancy restaurant in Tampa, holding a glass of champagne, with Tyler and their friends beside her. The caption read, "Perfect Sunday with the people who matter most." I looked at that line 3-4 times until it blurred with the steam from my cup. The people who matter most. And I wasn't in that frame. I set the phone on the table and looked at the stew simmering gently. The smell of onion, garlic, carrots, once the scent of family, had become the smell of loneliness, seasoned to perfection. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt a very soft crack inside, like wind splitting a window pane. No one heard it but me. That afternoon, I took my meal out to the porch, watched the empty street, and felt hollow as cars drifted by. I thought, maybe next year will be different. Maybe they're just busy. But then memories rolled back like a slow film. Last year, my daughter texted me at 11 p.m. "Sorry, Mama. The day got away from one. Love you." Tyler stayed silent all day. Then a week later sent a short line. "Been busy, Mom." I realized their forgetting wasn't accidental anymore. It was a habit, grown large by my own silence. That night, I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the fan spin. I asked myself, when did I disappear from their lives? When they got married? When money arrived? Or when I stopped lending? I had sold my wedding ring to pay Lauren's tuition, mortgaged the house to help Tyler open a garage, and thought that was love. Turns out those sacrifices taught them that mom is a given. The next morning I brewed coffee, but this time I skipped the usual milk. I wanted that bitterness to remind me it was time to wake up. I pulled out an old folder where I kept a few shares from my old company and a savings book I'd never touched. After doing the math, I saw I had enough $300,000, enough to buy a small beach house where I could start over. No one needed to know. No one needed permission. I booted up my old computer, checked Zillow, and scrolled through hundreds of listings. When I saw a white wooden house with 2 bedrooms and a big porch facing the sea, I stopped. Asking price, $299,000. Short description, a peaceful coastal home for a new beginning. I smiled. Maybe this was the invitation meant for me. I called Denise Harper, a local real estate agent who had helped my friend a few years back. Denise heard my voice and said, "If you truly want peace, I have a place that matches exactly what you sent. I think you'll love it." 2 days later, I took a bus for over 3 hours to St. Augustine, the oldest seaside city in America. The wind carried salt and a hint of jasmine from somewhere, and I felt lighter by the minute. The house sat on a small street shaded by palms. The white paint had yellowed, but the frames were solid. Denise opened the door with a warm smile. "Welcome to your new beginning." opening. As I stepped in, the sound of waves drifted from afar, blending with wind teasing the windows, the kind of sound that makes you believe in good things. I said only 4 words: I want to buy. A week later, the contract was done. I signed with a slightly shaky hand, but my heart felt light as air. For the first time in years, I did something just for me, not for my kids, not for anyone, not to prove a thing. Denise hugged me in congratulations. But before leaving, she looked at me and said seriously, "Josephine, I say this because I care. When you move in, find your own attorney to make sure no one can challenge your ownership. I've seen too many people lose their assets to their own kids." I smiled, thinking it was just professional caution. But that night, when I played Tyler's voicemail, "Hey Mom, heard you bought a house. Must be nice having all that money saved up," my heart went cold. The next morning, I called Denise. She referred me to attorney Maya Chen, 35 years old, who specializes in protecting seniors' rights. At our first meeting, Maya sat across from me, clear and steady. "Miss Josephine, what you described, distant children who suddenly care when assets appear, is a classic pattern of financial abuse within families. I suggest creating a trust and setting up an evidence protection system. The sooner, the better." I nodded. We worked on the documents together. Maya helped me open a personal fund, set up legal powers of attorney, and install home security cameras. She even helped me buy a small recorder, a coin-sized button I could stick under the table. A week later, I moved into the new beach house. In the mornings, I opened the windows, breathed in the salt, and listened to gulls crying in the distance. I started a journal, recording each day as proof of my new life. For the first time in years, I didn't need a text message to know I still existed. Then, this year's Mother's Day came around again. I expected nothing, just planned a small lunch for myself, clam chowder and butter cookies. At 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Lauren and Tyler stood there with a man in a black suit, a briefcase in his hand. "Hi, Mom. We thought we'd surprise you." They hugged me lightly. Lauren's perfume drowned out the sea breeze. We sat at the table. I poured tea and asked gently, "It's been a while since you dropped by." Lauren smiled. "I just want to make sure you're safe in this house." I was surprised when the man opened his case and pulled out a stack of papers. "This is a transfer agreement. You just need to sign so they can hold it for you, avoid scams." I looked at the pages, tiny print and blank lines, waiting for my signature. Tyler added with a hint of pity, "We only want what's best for you. $300,000 isn't a small amount." I set the cookie plate down and looked at them one by one. In that moment, all the years of sacrifice, cold dinners, nights waiting by the phone, played backward like an old film. I said nothing. I just poured more tea, smiled, and let my hand slide under the table to brush the recorder button. The soft click blended with the distant surf. Outside, sunlight flickered on the tea like a small flame. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd sign today. But they didn't know that on this Mother's Day, they hadn't come to take. They'd come to start facing the price of what they'd done. Sometimes I ask myself, when do people start walking away from you when they leave home, or the moment they stop listening? After that Mother's Day lunch, when my children left behind half-finished teacups and an unsigned contract, I sat a long time in the kitchen. The scent of butter cookies still lingered, but the warmth had gone long ago. I looked out at the sea as sunlight slanted across the water, and the old years began to rewind in my mind, like a faded film. I once believed we were a small, happy family, just the 3 of us, but full of love. After my husband left for a younger woman, I had no time to cry. I worked 2 jobs, by day at a grocery store, by night cleaning hospital rooms. I remember the late shifts, the disinfectant soaking into my hands, and thinking, as long as Lauren and Tyler get a proper education, it's all worth it. Lauren was the good student, the one with kind words. I sold my wedding ring, the last piece of jewelry from happier times, to pay her college tuition. I smiled and said, "One day, you'll wear another ring, not to recall the past, but to start a future." She hugged me, promising she'd take care of me after graduation. I believed her. Tyler, my only son, had skillful hands and loved cars from the start. When he said he wanted to open a repair garage, I took out a bank loan and mortgaged the old house. I thought, if I push a few more years, he'll have a career. I didn't know that was the moment I signed an open-ended contract of sacrifice. Time passed, and while I lived by a packed work schedule, their calendars began to be empty of me. On holidays they'd say, "Mom, plans changed this year, we're traveling with friends." The first time time, I pretended to be cheerful. Go ahead, I'm fine at home. The second time, I only asked, when will you be back? By the third time, I stopped asking. I still cooked full dinners and set 2 extra plates, habits of a mother who hadn't caught up to the fact that her kids had grown. Year by year, those plates stayed spotless from start to finish because no one sat down. On my birthday, Lauren sent one single text, a cake emoji, a heart. No message, no call. I stared at it, imagining her face as she hit send, probably just a few seconds between a meeting or lunch with coworkers. Tyler was worse, he forgot. 3 days later, when I texted, "How are you?" he replied with 3 words. "Very busy, Mom." I asked myself, when did I slip out of their frame? Was it when they got their own homes, their own families? Or when I stopped answering loan requests and started saying no? I remember Lauren once came over, hugged me tight, and said she urgently needed $500 to pay the electric bill. I pulled out the cash, even though I had a little over $600 in my wallet. She promised to pay it back by the weekend. That weekend came and went, then the next month, then the next year, the promise buried under silence. Tyler was the same. Whenever the garage struggled, he'd call, "Mom, I just need a little. You understand?" I understood, and I gave. Until one day, I opened my expense notebook and saw a total that stunned even me, over $70,000 in 4 years. I gave a sad smile, not because I regretted the money, but because I realized love and trust had been drained, with nothing returned. I started screenshotting every text and saving call logs as a way to keep proof, not to sue, but to remind myself never to forget the truth. I created a folder on my computer called Silent Years. Whenever I felt weak, I opened it and reread each line. "Mom, it's urgent, just this once. I'm busy, talk later." And I remembered why I had to be strong. Neighbors sometimes ask, "Haven't seen your daughter visit?" I just smiled. I learned to cushion the question with a smile. Inside, though, each question snipped one more thread tying me to hope. I stopped setting the table for ghosts, stopped calling just to hear a half-hearted voice, stopped waiting for goodnight texts. One summer evening, I watched a travel show about Florida beach homes. The sunset on the screen made me want to live again, not as a forgotten mother, but as a woman who still deserves peace. I opened my computer and created a new folder titled Coast Plan. I wrote out each line. Estimated home price, $300,000. Furniture, minimal, self-decorated. Home insurance, choose expanded safety coverage. Moving costs, $2,500. Emergency fund, $15,000 for legal situations. I wrote with a shaky hand, but each word was a piece of strength I took back for myself. I began selling what I didn't need. The vintage teacup collection, a few old paintings, the armchair my husband used to sit in, posted them all online. The house grew emptier, and strangely, I could breathe better than ever. The more space I cleared, the louder I heard my own voice. "You've endured enough, Josephine." Each morning, I opened the window to sunlight falling on a table set for one. I brewed coffee, watched the steam rise, and whispered, "It's okay, one is enough." Then, on a February night with a soft rain, I stood before the bathroom mirror under the yellow light. The lines by my eyes and mouth, each one a record of a patient year. I touched my cheek and said aloud, as if making a promise to myself, "I will stand by me." That small sound warmed my chest, like someone had opened a door. I slept better that night than I had in years. No more dreaming of a ringing phone, no more waking to phantom chimes, just rain pattering on the roof and a peace I'd never known. The next morning, I got up early and mailed my resignation. I decided to sell the old house and move somewhere new, where the past couldn't cling. Inside the envelope, I tucked a small note to myself. "Don't be afraid of losing your children. Be afraid of losing yourself without noticing." From then on, I prepared for freedom. I took 3 months to gather funds, check documents, and sign. No one in the family knew. I no longer felt guilty about keeping a secret. I felt calm, because this time, the secret still belonged to me. Sometimes, Lauren called not to ask how I was, but to share about her husband's promotion or her child's high test score. I listened, nodded, and ended with, "That's wonderful. I'm happy for you." Tyler, whenever money ran short, texted, "Mom, help me one last time." I still replied, "I'm not able to anymore." No anger, no tears, just a deliberate quiet. When everything was ready, I packed. I took only a few books, some old photo frames, and a small notebook scrawled with, "Start again where there's the sound of waves." On the day I left, I didn't leave a message, just a small note on the door. "I'm going to look for what you forgot, peace." And so I left. No fanfare, no one seeing me off, just me, a suitcase, and a dream that waited half a lifetime. I'd heard people say, everyone has a place meant for them, it's just that not everyone is brave enough to go find it. For me, that place appeared one March morning when I stumbled on a Zillow listing, 2-bedroom wooden house, windows facing the sea, wide porch to catch the wind, price $299,000. Description: a house for a new beginning. I stopped for a long time. The first photo showed a silver-white house, paint peeling a bit, nestled among green palms, the horizon a deep blue in the distance. A large window faced the ocean, a long wooden porch, and an old rope-hung swing. Something in that image touched me, a piece that felt like I'd lived there in a dream. I called Denise Harper, the agent recommended by an old friend. Her voice was bright and sincere. "Hello, Miss Josephine. If you're truly seeking peace, I think I've found the very house." 2 days later, we met in Street Augustine, the oldest seaside city in America. The sky was glass blue, the wind carried salt and jasmine. Denise arrived with her blonde hair tied up, a white linen dress, and a small ring of keys. "Are you running away or running toward?" she teased, half serious. I looked out at the sea and smiled. Both. The house sat on a quiet little street paved with coral stone. The walkway was dusted with fine sand, flanked by pink bougainvillea. When Denise opened the door, the smell of salt and old wood rushed in, as if the house had its own soul. Light poured through the big window, scattering on floating dust like the sun lived with me. "This belonged to an elderly couple," Denise said, opening each window to let the wind in. "They moved to live with their daughter in Maine. Paperwork's clean, just need a roof and foundation check." I walked slowly through the living room, chestnut-colored walls, bright floors. From the kitchen corner, you could see the outline of the surf, the thing I'd dreamed of for years. Under the stairs, a little shelf still held one old novel, The Old Man and the Sea. I smiled. Maybe that was a good sign. Denise led me to the porch. "I think you'll like this most." She pushed the door open, and there was a vast stretch of blue. The wind tossed my hair, the surf rolled, gulls cried far away. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, it felt like I'd just found my real heartbeat. "Miss Josephine?" Denise said softly. I opened my eyes. "I want to buy." Denise looked slightly surprised. "No more time to think?" I shook my head. "I've been thinking my whole life." We sat at the porch table to go over the steps. Denise called in an appraiser to check the roof, foundation, electrical, and plumbing. Everything was solid, just needed a few paint touch-ups and a glass pane replaced. I made the deposit that day. When I wired $300,000, my hand trembled. It was the money I once meant to leave for later, to my kids, like so many American mothers who believe their children deserve an inheritance. But now I understood. If you don't live fully while you are alive, leaving any amount behind is pointless. I wanted my later to start right now. That evening, I went back to a small motel. Wind rattled the finest window. The sound of waves tapped a far-off rhythm. I looked at the transfer receipt stamped completed and exhaled. I texted Denise, "Thank you. I'm not buying a house today. I'm buying myself back," she replied with a single heart emoji. I didn't tell Lauren or Tyler. For the first time in 40 years of being a mother, I had a secret I didn't share. Not because I feared objections, but because I wanted to keep a piece of life that wouldn't be judged. Before finalizing the paperwork, I sent everything to Maya Chen, the young attorney who had helped me set up documents to protect seniors' rights. She reviewed the purchase contract, then nodded slightly. "This house is in your name. No one can touch it unless you sign. But I recommend creating a living trust to protect the asset if anything unexpected happens later." I agreed. Maya helped me open a separate account, clearly stating, "The ultimate beneficiary will be chosen by me when I want, not when someone forces it." She also advised me to invest in security. I bought a 4-camera system with 90-day cloud storage mounted at the front door, back door, porch, and kitchen. Not because I feared burglars, but because I feared the uninvited return of those who once treated me like a place to take from. I wrote down all necessary contacts on a list called Emergency Contacts 1. Denise Harper, Realtor and new friend. A2. Maya Chen, attorney, legal contact. And 3. Dean Morales, Deputy County Sheriff, whom I know from volunteering at the Women's Association. 4. Dr. Mary Goldberg, family doctor who understands my health. I printed the list, laminated it, and stuck it behind the front door. Everything was organized and logical, as if I were rewriting my life from the beginning, but this time in my own handwriting. On key handover day, Denise drove over to pick me up. She put on some light jazz and said, "I love seeing people find their home." I smiled and answered, "And I love the feeling of not having to explain." When the car turned onto the sandy lane, I saw the house appearing between two rows of palms. Sunlight slanted through the leaves, scattering shimmering patches on the wooden walls like waves. The white door swung open. Wind rushed in, carrying the scent of the sea and of beginnings. I stepped inside, placed my hand on the wood, and felt warmth left by the sun. I spoke softly, almost a whisper, "From now on, I belong here." Denise laughed, "And this house has the owner it deserves." We opened the windows to let the breeze pass through every room, brushing away old dust. Denise helped me set the table again and hang a nameplate, "Josephine's house," by the door. She said, "Every house has its own soul. You just need to give it breath." In the afternoon after she left, I sat on the porch and watched the sunset slide down the water. I turned on the old radio. The previous owners left. Frank Sinatra drifted softly. The sea wind slipped through my hair, reminding me of evenings when I was young and believed peace existed only in songs. But now I knew it was truly here, all around me. I brewed a cup of tea, set it on the railing, and gazed out. The sea poured gold, birds gliding by and leaving thin black strokes like memory. I said quietly to myself, "All right, Josephine, you finally came home." That first night, I put on fresh sheets, turned off the lights, and left the window cracked for the breeze. The waves were steady like a lullaby. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't dream of a ringing phone. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the big window, lighting the dry salt streaks on the railing. I made coffee and sat on the porch steps, watching fishermen haul their nets in the distance. No traffic noise, no city sounds, only wind and sea and me. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, New Chapter. Inside it, I wrote the first line, "Today I officially stepped into the rest of my life, not to wait for anyone, but to live." I saved it, closed the laptop, and looked at the ocean again. The water shone like a mirror, reflecting my face, aged, but no longer sorrowful. It was the face of someone newly free. After I moved into the wave-facing house, I thought I was safe enough, but soon I realized peace needs protection too, not with locks, but with clarity. Maya, the young attorney I trusted, called me on a Monday morning. Her voice was firm but warm. "Miss Josephine, now that you have your own home and independent assets, the next step is to make sure that if anything happens, every decision still belongs to you, and no one can change it." I stayed quiet for a few seconds, listening to the surf outside the porch. Then I answered, "Go on, Maya." She sent me a list, a new will, medical and financial POAs, powers of attorney, a statement of assets, and even guidance on setting secure bank passwords. "You must designate who's allowed to act on your behalf if you can't sign," Maya said clearly. I knew she meant my children, Lauren and Tyler, those who once used taking care of mom as a banner to seize that power. I said softly, "I won't let anyone decide my life again." 3 days later, Maya came to the house. We sat on the porch while the afternoon light tilted through the palms. She opened her laptop and read each clause. Healthcare proxy, Dr. Mary Goldberg. Financial agent, Maya Chen. Will beneficiary, not disclosed. I signed. The pen moved slow and sure, like carving a vow. From now on, no one could sign for me unless I allowed it. When Maya left, she squeezed my hand. "You did what many can't, setting boundaries with your own family. That's not selfish, it's self-preservation." I nodded, a small but honest smile. That evening, I began standardizing security at home. I ordered a video doorbell that connects to my phone with cloud storage. Dean, the deputy sheriff I know from volunteering with the Women's Association, helped me install it. He showed me how to enable motion sensors, change the Wi-Fi password, and create a separate guest password. "You'll be surprised," Dean smiled. "A lot of asset grab cases start because someone knew the victim's Wi-Fi password." I laughed, never imagining something so small mattered, but inside, I felt grateful to him, a man who speaks little and does much. Dean also suggested a wall safe. He said, said, "Don't keep everything at the bank. You need a secure spot inside your home." I did exactly that. The safe was mounted behind an old painting in my bedroom. I carefully placed inside my passport, savings book, home purchase documents, insurance policies, and a USB drive with screenshots of texts, call logs, and my bank statements. I photocopied everything in duplicate, one set to Maya, one set for Denise to keep at her real estate office. Denise didn't ask much. She simply rested a hand on my shoulder and said softly, "Stay cautious, not because you're paranoid, but because they made you be." I went quiet. The truth in that line made my heart sting. A week later, I received a reminder letter for a routine checkup from Dr. Howard Feld, the geriatrician. I proactively added a request for a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. When I said that, Dr. Feld looked at me curiously. I smiled. "Just to make sure I'm sharper than people think." He chuckled and agreed. The assessment lasted over 2 hours. He asked how many words I could recall after 3 minutes, had me redraw shapes, then posed hypothetical financial scenarios. When we finished, he nodded and signed the record. Good cognition, independent reasoning, no signs of decline. I looked at that paper and felt relief. It wasn't just a medical record, it was a legal shield if someone ever tried to claim I was incompetent. But there was something else I needed: inner quiet. I found Dr. Naomi Price, a therapist in town. Her office was small, with landscape paintings and a gentle mint scent. On the very first day, she asked, "What's hardest for you, Josephine?" I answered honestly, saying no to my children. We spoke over many sessions. Dr. Price helped me see that kindness doesn't mean accepting harm. She taught me simple phrases I'd never dared to say. "No, I can't lend you money anymore. No, I don't agree to let you decide for me. No, I need rest. I don't need to keep proving my love." The first time I practiced those words, my throat tightened, but gradually, they grew lighter. Dr. Price said, "You're relearning the language of self-respect. It isn't loud, but it carries weight." At the same time, I began archiving every piece of evidence. I made a folder on my computer called "If There's a Case." Inside were screenshots of messages, bank histories, repair invoices, ownership certificates, and weekly backed-up security camera clips. I noted dates, times, and people involved, not because I wanted a fight, but because I refused to let truth be taken again. I also started a Coast journal. Each morning before coffee, I wrote down one thing I was grateful for. Day 1, I'm grateful I can still hear the waves. Day 10, I'm grateful I've learned to sleep without waiting for the phone. Day 30, I'm grateful I've stopped being afraid. The journal slowly thickened, handwriting slanted, ink in blue and brown, each line a brick I used to build my peace. I also formed a morning walk habit. At 5:30, before sunrise, the wind tasted salty and the sand was still cold. I walked the shoreline, counting waves instead of promises. They say the waves are never the same, yet they always return just like me. Even pushed far, I still found my way back to myself. Sometimes I met neighbors exercising, Mr. Martin walking his dog, Miss Ruth picking shells. We greeted one another, then quietly watched the sea. Few words were needed, just the sense that each of us was seeking our own peace. After a few weeks, I noticed my phone rang less. Lauren stopped calling often. Tyler sent one text asking if, "You still have your savings?" I replied, "I'm fine, don't worry." That was it. No more, no explanations. I wasn't a 24/7 switchboard for my kids anymore. Instead, I started caring for myself in the simplest ways. Every morning, I swam not in a warm pool, but in the real ocean, where the cold water numbed my skin. At first, I only waded near shore, water to my knees. Then, day by day, I went farther. The cold sliced like a blade, yet each swim felt like my brain rinsed away old memories. I called it my neural rebirth therapy. Dr. Price said, "You've found your own way back to life." In the evenings, I wrote my monthly plan: renew home insurance, update account passwords, send thank you notes to Denise and Dean, water plants, replace porch bulbs. Each bullet was small, but for me it was how I maintained sovereignty over my life. No one did those things for me anymore, and no one was allowed to take away that sense of control. One late night, while I was folding a blanket, the phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up and heard a man. "Mrs. Josephine Myers? I'm with the insurance company. We need to verify ownership of the house in Street Augustine." I paused for a few seconds, then smiled. "I'm the homeowner. I have all documents. Tell me what you need, and I'll send it immediately through my attorney." The line went silent for a few beats, then disconnected. "Do you have a mother or father living alone?" After the line, "I'll send it through my attorney," what else do you think they should prepare? Share what you've experienced in the comments. Your story might help protect someone else's peace. I sat on the sofa and felt my heart beat slow and steady. No more shaking, no more fear. I realized, when you prepare thoroughly, others run out of chances. That night, I went out to the porch and watched the moon rise over the ocean. Silver light stretched like a giant mirror. I poured a small glass of wine, raised it, and whispered, "To a new Josephine, who knows how to say no, how to keep quiet, and how to believe she deserves peace." The wind moved through the porch carrying salt and warm wood. In the dark, I felt safer than ever. 3 quiet weeks passed, as if the sea conspired with me, keeping all secrets in its waves. Every morning, I still walked the sand with a small notebook to write that day's gratitude. My life was simple, almost meditative. Morning coffee, a few lines in my journal, sunlight through the window, the mingled scents of salt and wood. I began to believe that Lauren and Tyler had stopped caring, or at least stopped trying to interfere. But on a Friday afternoon, the phone rang. Lauren's name appeared on the screen. My heart slowed a beat. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Her voice floated in smooth as honey, sweet to the point of counterfeit. "Mom, where are you? I miss you so much." Those 3 words, "miss you so much," fell light as feathers, but I heard the metal hidden inside. I leaned back and kept my tone even. "You miss me? It's been 3 weeks without a single text, and today you suddenly miss me?" Lauren gave a strained laugh. "I know, I was wrong. But I've been so busy, Mom. Where are you living? I'll drive over. I just want to see you." I was silent a few seconds, then asked, "Who gave you my address?" There was a pause. Very short, but enough for me to understand. Well," a neighbor said. "They saw you move. I just want to make sure you're okay." I pressed my lips together. A clumsy answer, and I marked it red in my mind. No one in the old neighborhood had this address. I'd carefully erased every trace, which meant someone had been digging. I said quietly, "I'm fine, Lauren, thank you. But today I'm busy another time." "That's okay, Mom," she said, too fast and too bright. "I'm already on my way. You'll be happy to see us." I looked at the phone after she hung up, the black screen reflecting my face calm but taut as a wire. The sea wind kicked up, carrying the damp smell of rain. I opened the security camera app and checked every angle. Green indicators glowed steady. The images were clear. Front gate, porch, living room, kitchen. The mics were live, everything under control. I texted Maya quickly. "My daughter called. She has the address. Bad feeling." In under a minute, a new message popped up. "Don't let them in. Dean and I are on our way." I breathed deep. Each breath tasted of salt, fear, and resolve mixed together. About 40 minutes later, an engine sounded on the road. I stepped onto the porch. A shiny black SUV stopped at the group gate, the kind people rent when they've got big business to do. The door opened. Tyler got out first, shirt buttoned to the top, eyes sweeping the yard, appraising every square foot. Lauren followed with a large handbag, heels sinking slightly into the sand. Finally, a stranger appeared. Gray suit, crisp tie, glossy black briefcase. I stood still on the porch, hands loosely clasped. Lauren smiled, a cut-and-paste smile from a Happy Family commercial. "Mom, oh my God, you really live here? It's beautiful, the ocean right behind the house." Tyler didn't smile. He just scanned around, eyes passing over the porch and windows before landing on the wooden sign by the door, "Josephine's house." He muttered, almost under his breath, "It's definitely worth it." Neither of them hugged me. No touch. No, "How are you, Mom?" Only eyes measuring in dollar signs. The man stepped onto the porch and held out his hand. "Hello, Mrs. Myers. I'm Victor Hale, your children's attorney." I shook it with just enough pressure. "Attorney?" Lauren cut in, sugar sweet. "Don't misunderstand, Mom. He's here to help organize your paperwork so you can feel secure. You know you forget things, we worry." A shiver ran through me. The way she said, "You forget things," light, natural, as if rehearsed. Victor opened his case and took out a stack of papers. Crisp white sheets, neatly aligned, clipped with a silver binder. This is a proposal to set up a trust managed by your children. It ensures your assets are protected and no one can take advantage of you. All spending would be co-supervised by them, so you can live here worry-free. I looked him in the eye and asked slowly, "And if I don't agree?" He gave a thin smile in true lawyer fashion. "Oh, that's fine. We're just presenting it. The decision is entirely yours." I glanced at Lauren and Tyler. Lauren avoided my eyes. Tyler stared straight back, cold as stone. I asked, "Where were you when I needed you? When I was sick? When I was abandoned? When I sold my wedding ring to pay Lauren's tuition? When I mortgaged the house to help Tyler open a garage?" No one answered, only silence and waves hitting the pilings as if underlining every word. I walked slowly to the porch table and pointed at the chairs. "Sit, but I won't be serving tea." Lauren frowned slightly. "Mom, we're just trying to help." I smiled, calm to the point of frightening. "Really? Then sit and help me look at the ceiling." All three followed my gaze. On the ceiling, the security camera glowed green and the mic blinked. Victor blinked and took a half step back. Lauren started to speak, but I cut in. "Yes, that camera records video and audio. Everything you say today will be stored for 90 days in the cloud, auto-backed up every 24 hours. I saw Lauren's hand tremble and Tyler turn away, hiding his unease under a mocking look. "Camera? You don't trust us, Mom?" I answered softly. "No, I've just learned to trust evidence more than words." The air thickened. Victor cleared his throat and tried to recover his professional tone. "Mrs. Myers, nothing serious. We just want you to feel at ease." I looked at him with a smile as cool as glass. How strange, no one has ever made me more uneasy than someone trying to help me feel at ease. At that moment, a car horn sounded on the road. I recognized the engine. Dean Morales's pickup turned onto the sandy lane. Headlights swept across the porch. At the same time, Maya stepped out of the passenger seat in a long coat, carrying a document case. Lauren jumped to her feet, surprise flashing in her eyes. "Mom, you called a lawyer?" I stayed seated and said, "No, she came because I have an appointment." Dean stepped onto the porch, voice steady. "Is there a problem here, Mrs. Myers?" Victor tried for polite. "Just a civil discussion, officer." Maya opened her case and pulled out a packet. What a coincidence. I brought copies of Mrs. Myers's new will and POAs, notarized and filed with the county court. Just to avoid misunderstandings, I watched both my children's faces change. Tyler frowned and clenched his fist. Lauren tried to smile, but her voice shook. "Why would you do this, Mom?" "We're only afraid someone will trick you," Maya answered for me. "It's wonderful you're concerned, but your mother hasn't been tricked. She's simply done allowing anyone to exploit her." Dean walked a slow circle, casually eyeing the SUV. The license plate caught the afternoon light, another county. He spoke slowly. "If the three of you have no specific purpose beyond a wellness visit, I suggest you leave before dark. The coastal road isn't easy to drive at night." The words were gentle, but it was an order that didn't need repeating. Victor nodded, trying to stay polite. "We'll come back later when Mrs. Myers is ready to talk." "Oh, I'm ready," I said. "I just don't say what you want to hear anymore." They went quiet and gathered their papers. Lauren put a hand to her chest, her voice breaking. "Mom, you've changed so much." I looked her in the eyes. "No, I've just gone back to being myself." As the SUV rolled out the gate, I watched without feeling hurt. Only a light emptiness remained, like after you clear out an old room and realize the wind can finally come in. Maya sat beside me and poured some water. Dean leaned against the porch rail, eyes still on the sea. "You did very well," Maya said softly. I shook my head. "No, they'll be back. My kids don't give up that easily." Maya looked at me, serious. "Then next time, we'll have more evidence." "You're not alone." I looked up at the ceiling. The camera light stayed green, loyal and silent. Outside, the waves hit the shore, steady as the ocean's warning. "The storm isn't over, Josephine. Be ready." And I knew exactly right. The real battle had only just begun. I used to think nothing hurts more than betrayal. But today I understand. Worse than betrayal is when the betrayer still calls you Mom. The next afternoon, just as I expected, the black SUV reappeared. This time there were no smiles, no sugar-coated voices, only the impatience of people trying to close a deal. I opened the door without inviting them in, but they stepped onto the porch as if the place were theirs. Lauren held the same stack of papers, voice trying to stay soft. "Mom, I just want to be clear. This isn't coercion. It's simply a way way to make sure you're properly cared for." I leaned on the doorframe. Light off the water lit her hair, but her face darkened with tension. Behind her, Victor Hale, the family attorney they'd hired, had already opened his briefcase, pulled out a new contract, and set it on the porch table like a finely woven net. "I," called Maya. She arrived soon after with her laptop and a look I trusted more than any document. "Let me read first," she said. Victor smiled, smooth as silk. "Go ahead. We're not hiding anything." Maya read quickly. The deeper she got, the more her brow furrowed. I heard her repeat each clause, as if to make sure I needed no further explanation. "If the beneficiary, namely Mrs. Josephine Myers, loses decision-making capacity, authority over assets transfers to co-guardians Lauren and Tyler Myers. Expenses for long-term medical care may include selling the primary residence to cover costs, and all actions are deemed lawful so long as they are in the best interest of the ward." The wording was cold as steel, wrapped in pristine paper. Maya looked up, straight at Victor. "So if she signs, you can sell this house without her consent simply by labeling it medical expenses. Am I correct?" Victor gave a thin smile. "Of course, but that would only happen if she's no longer competent." Lauren cut in, sharp. "We're just being cautious. This is our inheritance. Mom, you don't need to worry about it." I looked at my daughter. For a second I saw the little girl who once ran through the house to show me her first drawing. Now the woman in front of me talked about inheritance while her mother was still alive. I answered slowly, one word at a time. "Money that belongs to me while I'm alive is not inheritance. It's work, blood, and time. And it's still flowing in me." The porch went silent. Only the waves hit the pilings, steady, strong, and sure. Victor slipped back into his smooth negotiator's tone. "Mrs. Myers, we're not trying to make things hard. Sign, and in return, your children promise to call every week and visit often. It's a win-win." I laughed once, hoarse and short like ice clinking in a glass. "You're bribing me with affection? Trading a few phone calls for my right to be a person?" Victor hesitated, and Lauren lowered her head to avoid my eyes. Dean, still by the window, tracking every move, spoke in a calm, firm voice. "Mrs. Josephine Myers is the lawful owner of this home. I've checked the county land records. Any attempt to coerce, threaten, or trick her into signing falls under elder protection violations. And I should note, this entire conversation is being recorded on camera." Victor's expression shifted, then he forced himself to stay composed. "No one's coercing anyone, we're just concerned." Tyler shot to his feet, growling. "Mom's not in her right mind if she thinks this is okay. Who hides money in a house from her own kids? We just want to manage it so she doesn't have to worry." I looked at my son, eyes bloodshot. Not from love but from anger. I pulled the cognitive assessment from Dr. Feld out of my bag and held it out to him. "Here, Dr. Howard Feld, geriatric specialist, signed. Results: good cognition, independent reasoning, no signs of decline. If you still doubt me, I'll test again, but this time you come with me so we can see who's more blind." Tyler crushed the paper in his fist, face reddening. Lauren tugged his sleeve, whispering, "Stop!" He yanked away and slammed the paper onto the table. "Fine, play it your way, but don't think we'll stand by forever." I looked at Victor, who quietly tucked the contract back into his case, eyes cold and calculating. He knew he couldn't win today, but that look, part arrogance, part warning, said this fight wasn't over. Before leaving, Lauren turned back. "Do you really want to cut us off, Mom?" I answered softly, without a trace of anger. "No, I just want to cut off anyone who treats me like a walking wallet." Lauren bit her lip and turned away. The black SUV backed out, tires grinding through the sand, leaving deep, crooked ruts like torn promises. When they were finally gone, I stood on the porch and listened to wind whistle through the cracks. The sky shifted to dusk, half light, half dark, the same conflicted color as the kinship laid bare before me. Maya packed the documents, sliding their contract into an evidence envelope. "Do you want me to file this with the court now?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet. They'll be back, and next time we need them them to reveal everything themselves. Maya nodded, understanding. Dean stepped closer, voice low. You did well, but I'm afraid next time they won't come with just paperwork. I looked at him and smiled wryly. Then I won't have just paperwork either, he smiled, tilting his head. You really are a woman of strategy. After they left, I locked the door and drew the curtains. The house went quiet, only wind thudding against the window frame. I poured a glass of water and sat, hands wrapped around it for warmth. I looked around the wall clock, the little cactus, the lamp glow on a black and white photo of me when I was young. Everything was calm, only my heart still trembled, not from fear, but from the sorrow of seeing the truth stripped bare. Conditional family, I murmured, the words falling into the air like a cruel definition. I once believed love was unconditional, but today I saw clearly. For many, family lasts only until they get their signature on your assets. I set the glass down. My hands still shook a little, not from weakness, but the last tremor of someone slipping free of fear. I opened my laptop and backed up the footage into the folder, if there's a case. New file name, Trust Fraud Recording 1 MP4. I attached a note with the date, time, and attendees. A small but sturdy system like a fence I built around my heart. Outside, the wind rose. Waves pounded the shore, white and relentless. I looked out the window and said quietly, "Peace isn't the absence of storms, it's learning to stand steady in them." I smiled, then lifted the stated, "Water replacing tremor, replacing prayer. Thank you for letting me not sign today." A month after the day I refused to sign, I thought things had settled, but peace, so I learned, is never a free gift. It's envied, especially by those who share your blood. That morning, while I was watering the porch flowers, the mailman stopped. He joked with a smile, "Looks like you're famous, Mrs. Myers, court mail addressed just to you." I couldn't smile back. A chill ran down my spine when I saw the thick envelope stamped by the street, Johns County Court. I carried it inside, sat at the table, letter opener shaking in my hand, white paper, black print, neat, cold, petition to declare incapacity and appoint legal guardians, Lauren Myers and Tyler Myers. I read it twice. Every word thudded against my heart. My children didn't just want the assets. They wanted to strip me of personhood. I picked up the phone and called Maya. Her voice came quick and firm. "Don't panic, Miss Josephine. We won't play defense. We'll counterattack." That afternoon, Maya came over. She didn't wear her usual black suit, just a white blouse and hair in a neat bun. On the table, a new stack of files. Copy of the petition. Notice of hearing. Hearing date, the 12th of next month. She set a hand on the file, calm voice, eyes bright as flame. "We won't wait to be interrogated. We'll prove you're fully competent and that the ones claiming to care for Mom are angling for her property." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "Where do we start, Maya?" She pulled a notebook and read quickly. "We need witnesses, medical records, and social proof. I'll make a list." Then she wrote, clear line by clear line. 1. Denise Harper, the realtor, confirming the home purchase was entirely lawful and you decided every detail yourself. 2. Deputy Sheriff Dean Morales, witness to pressure and threats from the children. 3. Dr. Howard Feld, cognitive assessment proving no decline. 4. Dr. Naomi Price, therapy report confirming full emotional stability. The home purchase was a proactive, healthy decision. 5. Former neighbors, to testify that the children neglected their mother for years. I looked at the list and felt a little lighter. It wasn't a one-woman fight anymore. 3 days later, I met Dr. Feld again. He greeted me with a kind smile. "Maya told me about the suit. Don't worry, we'll do this by the book." This time he ordered the full battery: short-term memory, verbal response, reasoning, reaction time, spatial awareness. 2 hours of focused work. When we finished, he peered over his glasses. "Miss Josephine, I see many people your age, but few keep this level of sharpness. I'll sign the statement. No signs of cognitive decline." I thanked him and shook his hand, as if reclaiming a piece of dignity. It wasn't just a medical form, it was an ID card for my self-trust. The next day, I saw Dr. Naomi Price. Same office, mint scent, a seascape across from the chairs. I told her about the petition. She shook her head. "There's a name for what you're going through. Gaslighting of the elderly. When family tries to make a senior doubt her own memory. I gave a dry chuckle. My grandchild would call that modern family care. She laughed, then turned serious. I'll write the report. You're fully stable, fully capable, and your actions buying a home, planning, installing security are proactive decisions, not outside influence. I nodded, knowing that report would be the softest, sharpest weapon. That night at home, I stood before the mirror. A 67-year-old woman stared back, no makeup, but steady eyes. Maya had advised, you need to rehearse answers to their lawyers' questions. No emotion, no arguing. Each answer one breath long. Cut out words they can twist. I practiced, Mrs. Myers, do you remember how much you transferred to your son? I remember each amount, and I have the statements. Did you ever forget to pay a bill? No. All payments are automatic. I set them up. Do you ever feel disoriented or lose track of time? No. I keep a daily journal with exact dates, over and over, until my voice stopped shaking like relearning the native language of reason. In the last week before the hearing, Maya taught me body language. Shoulders back, eyes steady. When attacked, don't respond immediately. Pause 2 seconds, breathe, then answer. If they start yelling, turn to the court and say, I'll wait until they're calm. She also taught me to rest my hands lightly on the table instead of clenching, to show control. People won't just hear what you say, they'll watch how you exist. I smiled. You're training me like an actor, Maya replied. No, I'm teaching you to keep control in the very room where they want to take it away. In the final evenings, I compiled evidence. I printed a 2-year timeline, calls and texts from them, only 7. Calls, texts, and transfers from me, over 200. I clipped them into a blue binder labeled Evidence of Neglect and Financial Abuse. Looking at those numbers, I saw one truth. Real love never needs proof. Exploitation always leaves a trail. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep right away. I sat on the porch and watched the sea. The water wasn't calm, windy, whitecaps everywhere. I said to myself, tomorrow I won't be a victim. I may be the respondent, but I'm not weak. I'm standing up for my right to decide. I listened to the waves like my own heartbeat. Each surge and fall patient, persistent. I closed my eyes and breathed until fear dissolved like salt in water. Next morning, I woke early. Dawn was still gray. I chose a light gray blouse, soft slacks, flat shoes the color of sand. No jewelry, no necklace, no expensive watch, just a small clip to hold my hair. I wanted to enter the courthouse as myself, unarmored, but unbowed. Before leaving, I paused to look around walls, windows, stripes of light through the curtains. I whispered, don't worry, little house. I'll protect you and myself. Then I shut the door. The lock clicked small sound, but it rang like an oath. Dean waited by the car. Maya sat up front with the case on her lap, eyes intent. Ready? She asked. I smiled and fastened my seatbelt. Yes. Time to learn the art of being a defendant without lowering my head. The car rolled slowly along the coastal road. The sun edged up behind the palms, light flaring in the rearview mirror. I saw my face there, old but bright, tired but proud. Waves thumped in the distance, singing a quiet encouragement. Go, Josephine. This time, don't be afraid. You're headed toward your own justice. The street, Johns County courtroom, wasn't large, but the air was cold enough that I clasped my hands for warmth. Cream-colored walls, dark benches, and light pouring from high windows made the room solemn and heavy, as if every breath could be recorded. I sat at the defense table beside Maya. She opened the file and nodded to steady me. Stay calm. Today belongs to the truth, I answered with a small smile, though my heart pounded like surf before a storm. Across the aisle, Lauren and Tyler sat at the plaintiff's table in dark clothes. In front of them sat Victor Hale, the family attorney, with the calm face of a man too used to putting lipstick on lies. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The hearing began. Victor opened, voice precise and sharp like a freshly honed blade. Your Honor, my client's 2 devoted children only want to protect their mother, but Mrs. Josephine Myers has acted impulsively, irrationally, and shows severe self-isolation. She liquidated old assets, cut off contact with her children, and handed financial authority to an outsider, a young lawyer she barely knows. We believe she can no longer make reasonable decisions. Each word, impulsive, irrational, unreasonable, was a pebble thrown at my face. I looked down. My hands lay calm on my lap, knuckles white. Victor went on. Evidence shows that over the past year, she refused to see her children, kept kept no contact, and displayed troubling behavior installing cameras throughout the home, hiring a personal legal advisor, and recording family members. In our view, these actions stem from a victimization delusion, not sound judgment. Maya didn't interrupt. She waited, and when he finished, she stood, her voice light but clear. "Your Honor, we request to play the video evidence." The judge nodded. Maya signaled the technician. The large screen lit up with the first clip. It was Mother's Day last year. Me in my old kitchen setting 2 bowls of soup, a small mousse cake, and a card still unsigned. Maya spoke evenly. "Your Honor, this was Mother's Day. Mrs. Josephine prepared lunch for her children. The table is empty, and on social media, her daughter posted a photo with the caption, 'She zoomed in, with the people who matter most.'" Silence fell over the room. Lauren lowered her head, face still trying to stay cold. Maya said quietly, "A mother, self-isolating, or abandoned?" She clicked to the next slide. The screen showed 1 year of call and text logs, 4 calls from Lauren, 3 from Tyler, hundreds of unanswered calls and texts from me. "These are their contact frequencies," Maya said evenly. "Who cut off whom?" Victor leaned forward to object. "The court can't judge capacity on personal feelings." "Exactly," Maya replied, eyes flashing. "So we'll let the facts speak." She played the next video. "The confrontation at my house the day Victor, Lauren, and Tyler came demanding I sign the trust. In the clip, Victor's voice rang out, 'Sign it, and in return, your kids promise to call every week.' And Lauren's voice wavered, 'That's our inheritance money.' The courtroom seemed to freeze. I heard my heartbeat pounding in my chest, then looked at Maya. She gave a small nod. She turned to me and signaled. I stood and walked slowly to the witness stand. The light from above was cold and white. My voice was low but steady. "I didn't buy this house to run away. I bought it so I wouldn't be invisible anymore. All my life, I gave to them time, money, love, and when I had nothing left to give, I became a burden. I bought that house to live again, as a person with the right to exist." I paused and looked straight at my 2 children. Both Lauren and Tyler avoided my eyes. Maya called Dr. Howard Feld to the stand. He's nearly 10 years older than me, with the gravelly voice of someone who speaks slowly but surely. "I evaluated Mrs. Myers twice within 3 months. Both times showed completely normal cognition, logical thinking, good reaction time, and solid problem solving. There is no medical evidence whatsoever that she lacks capacity." Victor tried to press him, "But could she have a mild psychological issue, like anxiety or a delusional belief?" Dr. Feld answered immediately. "No, I conducted the evaluation myself. She's clearer than most of her relatives." A soft ripple of laughter went through the room. The judge tapped the gavel. "Order." Next was Dr. Naomi Price. She entered with a gentle presence, but her voice could quiet the entire room. "Mrs. Josephine Myers came to me to learn how to say no to unreasonable demands. No one is mentally ill just because they want to protect themselves. On the contrary, that's a sign of emotional recovery." Maya smiled, then motioned for the next witness, Denise Harper, the real estate agent. In a light blue suit with her hair pulled back, she spoke clearly. "I handled Mrs. Myers's home purchase. She reviewed every detail: foundation, electrical, property taxes, insurance, maintenance fees. There was no sign of confusion or impulsivity. Every decision was carefully considered, and she signed only after reading each clause." Finally, Deputy Sheriff Dean Morales took the stand. In uniform, he moved slowly but with authority. "During my role as witness and security support, I found no sign of fraud. What I did observe was psychological pressure from the 2 adult children, including threats, insults, and attempts to force a signature." Victor sat silent, gripping his pen. Lauren exhaled hard, and Tyler kept his head down, avoiding the judge's eyes. Maya rose, closed the file, and her voice rolled out steady, each word as clear as waves breaking on rock. "Your Honor, this is not the story of a frail, confused mother. This is the story of an older woman reclaiming her autonomy and of children trying to use the law to launder their greed. I don't need many words, only to invite the court to look at the screen and ask, who actually needs protection?" The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned back, his eyes deep and calm. calm. He tapped the gavel lightly, then said, "After reviewing all evidence and testimony, the court concludes there is no basis to declare Mrs. Josephine Myers incapacitated. On the contrary, the plaintiff's conduct shows signs of attempting to exploit an elderly person's property. The petition is denied. The plaintiffs will pay all court costs and are warned that continued harassment may result in criminal charges." The room erupted into a hush. Lauren's breathing turned shallow, Tyler slammed his hand on the table, and Victor bowed his head while hurriedly packing his files. Maya touched my shoulder and whispered, "It's done." I stood, bowed to the judge, and turned to leave. My steps were slow but steady. Sunlight flooded the hallway, washing over my hands still trembling, but now from relief. In my mind's eye, I could still see the Mother's Day table, the empty table, but now I knew, even if no one sits with me, I can still eat in peace. When I stepped out of the courthouse, I lifted my head. Sunlight spilled across my hair and laid a warm weight on my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt a lifetime's heaviness slide off, not because I'd won the case, but because I was no longer treated as someone who had to prove she was sane enough to live. Wind blew in from the sea, carrying salt and sap, the scent I call the true smell of freedom. Maya came to me and held me tight. Her voice was small but firm. "Miss Josephine, you chose yourself, and the law stood by you." I didn't answer right away. I just squeezed her hand. Some victories don't need cheering, only a deep breath that tells you no one can shove you out of your own life anymore. Dean waited by the gate with a gentle smile. "Told you. You're too strong for the waves to swallow. Just keep going." I thanked him, then turned toward the sea where sunlight melted into water, glittering like 1,000 tiny hands patting the earth in applause. That evening, I sat on the porch. The sea breeze was salty, threading through my hair, my collar, and my spirit. Moonlight blinked across the water like shards of broken mirrors, quietly beautiful. I put the case file in a drawer and took out a blank sheet of paper. I wrote the first line, "To myself, the one who stood up when others wanted to kneel." I didn't write much, just a few simple sentences. "Thank you for believing in yourself, even when people called you crazy. Thank you for saying no, even while your heart still wanted to be loved. Thank you for choosing to live, not just exist." I folded the letter and tucked it into the Coastal Journal. It wasn't a thank you to life, it was gratitude to the strong part of me, the part I once buried under useless apologies. 3 days after the ruling, Lauren texted, "Just a few lines. Mom, can we talk? We only want to settle. If you return the house and withdraw the filings, everything will be fine." I read it without anger, only tired. I closed the phone, set it on the table, and stepped onto the porch. The waves kept coming, the sky stayed blue, and I understood. My silence today was the clearest answer. Not because I hate them, but because I've stopped hoping to be loved on their terms. That night, Tyler called. His voice was sharp, rapid. "You think it's over because you won? I'll tell the papers you're senile, so everyone sees how crazy you really are." I listened to all of it without cutting in. Then I answered calmly, "Thank you for calling, and everything you just said is being saved on my server." I heard a hard inhale on the other end, then the line went dead. I set the phone down, no longer shaking like before. Maya once told me, "When people use threats, it means they've lost real power. Your job is not to hand it back." I smiled. "Exactly. I don't need to win by fear. I only need not to bow." The next morning, I took out a few seed packets Denise had sent, coastal wildflowers that need only sun and wind. I rolled up my sleeves and let my hands sink into the damp sand. The earth was cool, comforting. I planted small clusters along the porch, right by the wooden rail. When the wind blew, grains of sand dusted my cheek, and I didn't brush them away. They reminded me I can still feel the world with skin and breath. That afternoon, I stopped by the fishing village for coffee. The owner grinned. "Want the fisherman's style? Salt coffee, bitter, salty, sweet on the finish." I nodded. The first sip made me wince, but then the salt opened into gentle sweetness. I laughed and said, "Just like life, the salt makes you remember the sweet." He nodded. "That's why coastal folk don't fear bitterness. In the end, every salt water finds its way back to the sea." That night, I slept straight through without dreaming of the empty table. No scraping chairs, no waiting for a doorbell that never rings, only waves steady and kind as a heartbeat. For the first time in years, I didn't dream of anyone coming back. I saw myself on the sand, arms open to the wind. Freedom, it turns out, looks like the wind unseen, but real. heal wherever it touches. One morning, walking the beach, I met Ruth Ellison, the silver-haired woman I'd noticed a few times. She smiled and asked, "Are you Josephine Myers? I read about your case. I felt like I was reading about myself." I was a little surprised. "The article said your children sued you too, right?" she asked. I nodded. She sighed softly. "Me too. But I never dared go to court. I stayed quiet and lost my house." I took her hand. "I'm so sorry, Ruth. But you know, silence doesn't keep anyone. It only keeps the pain." She gave a sad smile, pale blue eyes on the horizon. "I learned that from you. When I read the ruling, I sat up and cried. I wished I'd had your courage." I squeezed her hand gently. "It's never too late to choose yourself." From then on, we started morning coffees. 2 women, 2 wooden chairs, 1 pot of salt coffee. We sat on my porch, listening to the waves, saying things we'd never dared say. Ruth told me about her old marriage, about a son who left at 20. I told her about the years I thought giving more would make them love me back. We didn't complain, didn't cry. We just talked and sometimes sat quietly together. Once, when I said I still write one thing I'm grateful for each day, Ruth smiled. "I write one thing I no longer need. Yesterday I wrote, I don't need to prove I'm a good mother." I laughed. "Good one. Then today I'll write, I don't need to apologize for protecting myself." One breezy morning, Ruth said something I'll never forget. The wind was strong, the waves loud, but her voice was clear and warm like a prayer. "Peace is an asset, Josephine, and the biggest mistake we women make is signing it over to other people." I sat still. Those words fell into my heart like sand, light but settling deep. I looked out at the sea where the sun was rising, gilding the waves. Yes, peace is not a prize, it's property. And from now on, I'll hold the title in my own hand, no consigning it, no granting it to anyone, Myers or otherwise. I breathed in. The wind filled my lungs salty and clean. Ruth smiled, lifted her salt coffee, and clinked cups with me. "Congratulations, Josephine. We're still alive, and this time, we're living for ourselves." I answered with a trembling but warm voice. "Yes, this time I'm not just living, I'm truly free." One early summer morning, just as I set the coffee pot on the porch table, a small envelope slid through the mail slot. No return address, only a scrawl on the front, "To Grandma." I knew the better. Handwriting, it was Emma's, my 10-year-old granddaughter, Lauren's child. I sat down, hands shaking a little as I opened it. Inside was a purple sheet, the corner creased twice. "Grandma, I miss you. Mom says you're busy, but I saw you in the news. I don't understand everything, I just know you're not bad. When I grow up, I want to be like you, able to say no and still be kind. I love you lots. P.S. Do you still have a cat?" I read it over and over, each line like a needle touching the softest part of my heart. It had been so long since I cried this time because I saw myself through a child's eyes. I picked up a pen and wrote back right away. "Dear Emma, I miss you too. The sea here is beautiful. Every morning the waves run up to say hello. The waves come and go, but the tide always returns like true love, which finds its way back no matter how far it travels. I want to teach you 3 things about self-respect. 1. Never stay silent when your heart says no. 2. Don't believe anyone who calls you selfish for protecting yourself. 3. When others turn away, stand tall. Your straight back helps your head stay high. I don't have a cat yet, but lots of birds sing on my porch every morning. If you visit, I'll tell you all their names. Love, Grandma." I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and mailed it with careful handwriting. For the first time in months, my heart felt calm as the morning sea, no undertow, just light spread across the water. That evening, Ruth, Denise, and I hosted our first Thursday night book circle. We sat around a small round porch table, each with a dog-eared book and a hot cup of tea. Denise chose The Old Man and the Sea, Ruth brought The Color Purple, and I read a short passage from Maya Angelou's journal. When I read, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it," Ruth pressed a hand to her heart. "That was written for us," Denise smiled. "I think it was written for every generation of women who once let others speak for them." We sat quietly, listening to the waves and the night insects riding the breeze. A little later, Maya the young lawyer stopped by with strawberry tarts. She said, half joking, "I'm here to make sure you 3 don't start an anti-lawyer league." We laughed out loud. That sound, I realized, was something I hadn't heard in my own home for a long time. From then on, Thursday book nights became a small ritual. We didn't just read, we told our stories. Each of us was an open book, and the only wall left between us was trust. The next morning, I joined the ocean swimming group for seniors. They call themselves the Morning Tide Swimmers. The first lesson wasn't technique, it was breathing longer instead of worrying. The coach, a 75-year-old woman named Nora, said, "People don't drown because of the waves. They drown because they forget to breathe." I took it to heart. Each time the cold water wrapped around me, I inhaled deep, closed my eyes, and felt my body fall into rhythm with the sea. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the deep. I understood that the more you fight, the more you sink, and the more you accept, the more you float. One afternoon, Dean stopped by. He carried a form and a small packet. "I signed you up for the county's Personal Safety for Seniors program. They'll install an emergency app and give you a portable alarm." I teased, smiling. "So you really see me as a senior now?" Dean grinned gently. "No, I see you as someone smart enough to plan ahead." He set up the app, showed me how to toggle it, and how to send my location if needed. Before leaving, he said, "Peace doesn't always come on its own. You have to fence it in." I nodded. I'd learned that, and this time the fence was made of awareness, not fear. The next day, I made clam chowder and brought it to the neighbors, the Carters, the retired couple who helped me move in. "Mrs. Carter was surprised. "You still remember the Northeastern recipe? Goodness, it smells amazing." We ate together and talked about gardens, rain, and the old days. Before I left, she held my hand. "We need you here, truly. Not many like you in this town." I stopped short. "We need you." The words stung my eyes. For years I'd only heard, "We need you for one more thing," and behind that always came money, labor, or sacrifice. Now, for the first time, someone needed me for me. That night I wrote another letter, this one for forgiveness. I wrote to Lauren, to Tyler, and even to Victor. "I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. It only means I'm no longer carrying you on my back. I didn't send it. I folded it and placed it in the Coastal Journal. Forgiveness," I realized, "doesn't need a recipient. It just needs the writer willing to let go." The following week, I started a new project, a blog called Coastal Diary at 67. I wrote under my real name. The first post was titled, "Don't Let Anyone Write Your Ending." I told my story, from a mother stripped of control to a woman relearning how to own her breath. No frills, no philosophy, just truth. I didn't expect it to travel so far. Hundreds of comments, most from older folks. I'm 72, and I just said no to my son for the first time. "You made me want to go visit my mother. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel." One morning, someone knocked. A middle-aged woman stood there with a bouquet of lavender. "I'm Emily from the next town," she said, voice tight. "After reading your blog, I went to see my mother, whom I hadn't visited in 2 years. We hugged this morning. Thank you because you reminded me time isn't endless." After she left, I sat down and cried, but not from sorrow. It was the first time I cried because I felt useful. That afternoon, I cleaned a closet and found a spare set of keys, house, safe, back gate. I turned them in my hand, then put them in a small glass jar and labeled it, "Open only when you remember yourself. Not when I forget, but when I remember. Remember how long it took to earn this freedom." I set the jar on a shelf beside an old photo of me and Emma on the beach. Two faces, one big and one small, both turned to the sea where the waves keep rising, reminding me, anyone can begin again, at any age, no matter the losses. I whispered, a promise to myself. If anyone comes looking for me, they'll find a woman who's living not afraid, not waiting, just breathing. The sea breeze slipped through the window and lifted a note on the table. "Peace is an asset, don't sign it over to anyone." I smiled. Peace, yes, now it looks like me. 2 years passed. I stopped counting by calendars and started counting by the smell of wind and the brightness of morning. The waves out there keep time like a clock, the only thing in my life that has never missed an appointment. The second year, after the trial, is also the second year. I haven't gotten a single call from Lauren or Tyler. No birthday texts, no Christmas greetings, no Mother's Day card. But the strange thing is, I don't fall apart anymore. No more waiting, no more flinching every time the phone rings. I just smile, turn on the oven, and get ready for my own small party, the birthday I throw for my chosen family. That afternoon, the sea-facing house smelled of cinnamon apple pie. Ruth came early with a pot of mint tea. Denise brought a bundle of dried lavender, and Maya arrived a little late, slightly out of breath. Sorry, court ran long this morning, but I brought wine. We put on jazz, opened the porch doors, and let the wind blow through the house. Dean stopped by too, still in uniform, carrying a small cake with a handwritten line. For the bravest lady in town. I laughed, my voice catching a little. If you knew how soft I was 2 years ago, you wouldn't call me that. Dean smiled. Brave doesn't mean never weak. It means weak and still moving. We ate, told stories, and laughed, the sound I once thought I'd never have again. No fancy cake, no noisy toasts, just the smell of baking, the sunset light, and 4 friends around a wooden table. I looked around and suddenly realized, this is the real family, the ones not tied by blood but who never leave. That evening, after everyone left, I cleaned the table. Under a dessert plate, I found a small envelope labeled, "From Emma to Grandma." I froze. The postmark was from an elementary school in another city. I opened it and found a small note, written in neater handwriting than before. "Grandma, Mom didn't let me send a gift this year, so I'm writing in secret. When I'm old enough to decide, I'll come visit you. I still remember the way you told me about starfish, and I drew it on the back. I love you so, so much, Emma." I flipped it over and saw a small drawing, 2 people, one big and one small, lying on the sand, looking up at a sky full of stars. In the corner she'd added, "I believe stars still shine even when you can't see them in the daytime." I pressed the letter to my chest. Tears fell, but they were warm, not for what was lost, but for knowing something beautiful still exists somewhere, even if not within reach. The next morning, I wrote back to Emma, "My dear Emma, when you look up, you'll see the stars like little beads of memory. I look at that same sky every night. If you come someday, we'll map the stars so we won't lose each other, no matter where we are. Remember, you can love someone without losing yourself. Love, Grandma." I tucked the letter into a small notebook and marked it with a sprig of dried lavender. When she finds her way to me, I'll give it to her, not as an explanation, but as a map to freedom. A few weeks later, Ruth shared big news. "Josephine, I'm moving out on my own." I looked at her and still saw a little worry in her eyes. "I rented a small place at the end of Ocean View, not far, but I want to cook the first meal in my own kitchen." I was happy for her, and I knew the feeling, equal parts excitement and tremble, like learning to walk after an accident. I helped her make a safety list, emergency numbers, the door camera spot, the porch light schedule, and regular health checkups. Ruth smiled, half teasing, half touched. "You know, I once thought I couldn't start over, but watching you, I believe I can." I answered softly. "I thought that too. Until the waves taught me everything can change direction." On moving day, I walked her to the door. That night, like always, I sat on my porch and watched the light from her new place flicker in the distance. A small light, but steady proof that some people arrive late in life, but right on time in your heart. A week later, Denise called with news. "House sold, Joe. The buyer's a widow from Maine, also in her 60s. I told her this neighborhood has good neighbors." I smiled. "Thank you, kind agent." When the woman moved in, we brought a small lavender plant and set it on her porch. She hugged me and whispered, "I used to fear starting alone. But seeing you smile, peace doesn't feel scary anymore." Walking back, Denise said, "Funny how some houses don't just change owners, they change the air." I nodded. Maybe when someone learns to live true, the place they live warms up too. Time passed, and I agreed to teach a small class at the community center. Property rights and personal boundaries for older adults. Maya suggested it. "Just tell your story, no heavy law. They need to hear from someone who lived it." At first I refused, afraid my voice would shake, but that first day, facing a dozen silver heads and curious eyes, I took a deep breath and began, "I'm not a lawyer, just someone who nearly lost everything because of the word trust. Trust isn't wrong. What's wrong is trusting without limits. Boundaries don't make us selfish. They make love clean." After class, an elderly man came up and said softly, "Ma'am, I'm going home to talk to my son. Not to fight, just to talk." "Thank you." I smiled. If one story helps one person keep their home, then everything I went through was worth it. That night, I opened an old album. Back then, our family photos always missed someone. The photographer, the angry one, the one avoiding the frame. Now, in the living room, I hung a new picture. Me on the wooden porch, a blazing red sunset behind me, holding a cup of salt coffee. No one cropped out, and no one needed to stand beside me to make happiness. That photo, to me, proves a life can mend. I stood before it and whispered, "Peace is a decision, not a circumstance." Outside, the waves rose and fell like the earth's heartbeat. I realized the last big wave of my life isn't loss, it's the return of myself. I inhaled and smiled. If someone asked me what happiness looks like, I'd say, it looks like tonight's sunset, no debts owed, only fullness in your chest. One early morning, before sunlight reached the porch, I opened my laptop, set a cup of tea beside it, and wrote the final opening line for my blog. Love isn't measured by waiting, it's measured by the way we live. I read it 3 times. Simple, but it holds everything I learned in 2 years about loss, about boundaries, about loving without losing yourself. I no longer write the blog to tell stories, but to put a clean period at the end of a journey. At the bottom, I introduced something new, a scholarship in my mother's name, Eleanor's Light, for older women starting over, even if it's just a cooking class, driving lessons, or learning to upon Eleanor's Light. Use a smartphone. I don't have much money, but enough to start. In the description, I wrote, "My mother's light never glittered, but it was bright enough to guide me out of the fog. Now I just want to pass that light on." When the scholarship paperwork was done, Maya called, her voice moved. "You know, you didn't just win a case, you changed how people see aging." I laughed. "No, Maya, I just learned to live, not wait." On my front door, I taped a small note in blue ink, "Not for sale, not for rent, not negotiating, only coffee." Half joke, half true. Plenty of people have tried to buy my beach house, offering twice the price. Some even pitched turning it into a homestay. I only smiled. This house isn't for business, it's the rest of my heart, and I won't slice it up. Every morning, I brew a pot of coffee, open the porch, and let the aroma ride the sea breeze. People say coffee smells like memory, but to me, it's the scent of freedom chosen. That afternoon, I sat on the porch and listened to the waves. The sound hadn't changed, but I had. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said softly, "Thank you to the version of me who turned her back on silence." I used to fear the silence between calls that never came. Now I know silence isn't scary. It's only scary when you don't use it to hear yourself. I opened my notebook and wrote on a new page, "If they call someday, I'll open my heart, but with clear boundaries. I can forgive, but I won't trade peace for kinship again." Boundaries, in the end, aren't walls, they're maps that keep us from losing ourselves. That autumn, I turned 69. No flowers, no gifts, just wind and laughter. Dean brought a small plant and said, "It's called Wind's Whisper. It blooms only when the soil is watered steadily and the grower isn't in a hurry." I smiled. Sounds like me, doesn't it? Nearly 70 years to bloom one season of peace. We sat together without many words. Ruth came with apple tart, and Denise swung by late with fresh-cut lavender. We didn't call it a party, just an ordinary afternoon where everyone could be themselves. That night, I went to the beach. The water reflected the moon, rippling like a silver ribbon. I lit a small candle, set a cup of tea on the porch, and invited the wind in my little ritual of making peace with life. No music, no incense, just wind and salt. I closed my eyes and saw myself clearly, not the mother cut out of the frame, but the person standing in the center of her own picture. Quietly, like a thank you, I said, "Thank you, because I'm still here, and I live." If my story reaches you, maybe it's because you carry a piece of me too, the one who loved hard, endured in silence, and finally learned to stand on her own side. I want to ask, where are you listening from? A small house by a lake? An apartment in the city? Or somewhere you're learning to begin again? Leave a comment and tell me about a time you chose yourself, even if it was just saying no to what was hurting you. If this story helps you, please like and subscribe so more older people can find a way out the way we did. Thank you for your time. I don't know who you are, but I know we just shared the same breath, the breath of people who chose peace over fear. I truly appreciate you. Night fell, and the wind poured into the house with the smell of salt and a strange warmth. I stood, gently closed the blog, and turned off the living room light. By the window, the wind's whisper trembled, the moon still shone, the waves still sang, and I, the woman once labeled incapacitated, now have only one thing left to lose: fear. I sat down, took the last sip of tea, and spoke aloud my farewell to the past. I live, I don't wait.